Did you know that I, Herbert Clark Hoover, 31st President, became an orphan at age 9? Even though my parents died and my siblings were split up, I managed to get a good education at Stanford, a career as a miner, and a career as a Secretary of Commerce before becoming the 31st President of the United States. I tried hard to accomplish many things. Luckily, my life was nice at the start. I was born on August 10th, 1874. I was born in a small 3-room house, as you can see behind me, in West Branch, Iowa. I was nicknamed Birdie. West Branch was a small prairie town of about 200 people. My family and I were members of the Society of Friends, also known as the Quakers. I enjoyed sledding on Cook's Hill and fishing with my friends. After those good times, I had a difficult childhood. My father, Jesse Hoover, made horseshoes. When I was 6 years old, my dad died suddenly of heart disease. My mother's name was Hudla Hoover. She rented out a room in the house to help ease the financial burden. We kids were sent to live with relatives for weeks or months. My mom died 3 years after my dad in 1884. First she was weakened by typhoid fever, then she developed pneumonia and died. I was 9 years old at the time. My 2 siblings were Mary, who was 2 years younger, and Theodore, who is 3 years older. And here are my siblings. Yeah. After my parents died and my siblings were split up, I was sent to live with my Aunt Millie and Uncle Alan. At night, I would lie awake missing my mom. It was sad. When I was 11, I was sent to live with my Aunt Laura and Uncle John Minhorn. They lived in Oregon, and Uncle John was a medical doctor. Before graduation, I worked hard. When I worked at the Minthorns, I milked cows, fed and watered horses, and split wood for the fireplace. I also burned fallen trees, some measuring 4 feet across. I helped my uncle set up the Oregon Land Company in Salem. While at college, I worked as a store clerk, ran laundry, delivered newspapers, and managed special lectures and concerts. My geology professor, Dr. John, had me work on geological surveys of Arkansas and California's Sierra Nevada mountains. I earned $40 a month from that job. Even though I was working, I still managed to get a good education. I went to the Friends Pacific Academy, which was a small Quaker school run by the Minthorns. I was expected to be serious in my studies there. By age 16, I was tutored at Palo Alto, and after a summer of tutoring, I was admitted to Stanford University. I selected mechanical engineering as my major, but later changed it to geology. I graduated in 1895. After I graduated, I got some pretty good jobs. The first job I got was as a miner. I worked at Reward Gold Mine in Grass Valley, California. I was paid $14 per week. And then I got a job with Mooring and Company and earned $7,200 a year, which was a lot of money at the time. I worked in gold mines in Australia, and by 1914 was director of 18 mining and financial companies. I employed 100,000 people around the globe. By age 40, I'd become a multi-millionaire. I raised money to buy food for the Belgians, who were starving from war, so President Wilson named me the food administrator. Then President Harding invited me to serve in his cabinet. I accepted and became the Secretary of Commerce. While I was working, I developed a loving family. Lou Henry, whom I met in geology, received a telegram from me saying, "Will you marry me?" Lou accepted, and we were married at Lou's parents' home in California on February 10th, 1899. We began our honeymoon the day after we were married. After that, we moved to London and had 2 sons, Herbert Clark Jr. and Alan Henry. Later, we moved to Washington. My family helped me during my campaign for president. I was a Republican running against Al Smith. My running mate was Charles Curtis of Kansas. I won the election with over 21 million to Al's 15 million in the popular vote, and I carried 40 of the 48 states, winning 444 to the Democrats' 87 in the electoral vote. My inauguration was held in March 1929. The oath of office was administered by the former president, then Chief of Justice, William Howard Taft. As president, I had some accomplishments and some failures. I constructed the Boulder Dam, and it was later renamed the Hoover Dam. I donated my salary each year to charity without the public knowing. People borrowed money from the banks to pay for stocks, but then the stock market crashed and started the Great Depression. Banks ran out of money, and there were a lot of homeless people. By my re-election, a common sign for hitchhikers was, "Give me a ride or I'll vote for Hoover," so it was no surprise that I lost my second term to Franklin Roosevelt, with my 59 electoral votes to Roosevelt's 472. After I lost the election, I did some interesting things. I helped distribute some more food, helped the government run more efficiently, and save billions in government expenditures. I died on October 20th, 1962, at age 90. My funeral was held at St. Bartholomew Church. Upon request, my funeral was a small Quaker funeral instead of an elaborate funeral for the president. Lou died before me of a heart attack in January 1944, and we were buried in West Branch, Iowa, with 2 simple granite stones marking our spots. In my lifetime, I proved to be a very interesting man. When I was young, I stepped on a hot horseshoe and later called the burn my brand from Iowa. I was the manager of Stanford's baseball and football teams. I also shared a friendship with John F. Kennedy's dad, Joseph Kennedy. My son had 2 pet alligators that would sometimes wander the White House, and 7 dogs, too. By 1964, I was deaf and nearly blind, but I still managed to write a history of a communist influence on Western nations. I enjoyed sweet potatoes with marshmallows, was 5 feet 11 inches tall, and loved fly fishing. I also approved the Star-Spangled Banner as the national anthem. Accomplishing many things is what I tried hard to do. Even though my childhood was rough, I had a good education, a job as a miner, Secretary of Commerce, and then finally president. I proved that I was able to achieve greatness. Who would have thought that a young orphan would one day become President of the United States?